Oasis Audio presents The Miracle of the Kurds, a remarkable story of hope reborn in northern Iraq, by Stephen Mansfield, read for you by the author. To Nur, Farah, and Mesht, I will always hold your stories in my heart. From this day on, she was a flute, and the hand of the wind endowed her wounds with melodies. She has been singing ever since, for the world. Kurdish poet Shirko Bekaz, writing of Kurdistan. Prologue. An Author's Debt. There is a great debt I have incurred during the years that have formed themselves into this book, and it is to the Kurdish people themselves. It is the debt I owe them for changing my life. When I first began to travel among the Kurds of Kurdistan in the early 1990s, it was as part of an international relief team. I confess the experience impressed me almost entirely as a grand adventure. I had never been in the Middle East before. To fly from the United States to Istanbul, and then on to Diyarbakir in eastern Turkey, before driving 5 hours south to Duhok, Iraq, seemed the exotic adventure of a lifetime. In those days, Turkish troops patrolled the roads into Kurdistan. We were stopped often. Machine gun fire echoed in the distance, and our vehicles wove warily around tanks strategically positioned on mountain roads. We ate in roadside villages so old, and so fixed at the heart of the Fertile Crescent, that the patriarch Abraham might well have dined in the same villages millennia before. It was, I confess with regret, the journey itself that initially thrilled me most. My exaggerated sense of adventure was further inflated when the Turks closed the roads into northern Iraq. This forced our team to fly into Damascus before making a 9-hour drive across the Syrian desert. I thus found myself in what I ignorantly thought of as Arabia. It was intoxicating. Images from the writings of T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, played in my mind. Bedouin men stared at us curiously from their easy perches atop unruly camels. Black tents dotted the eternal sands, and seemed in their undulations to breathe for that great living being, the desert. I touched the ancient stones at Palmyra, ate fresh naan, the round, flat bread of the Middle East, by open fires, and dragged my fingers in the waters of the Euphrates when, finally, an unsteady motorboat carried our team to the far shore of Kurdistan. I am ashamed that the journey ever meant more to me than the people, but for a season it did. I put this down to the myopia of youth and to the overly domesticated life I was living at the time. Thankfully, when the greater meaning of my experience announced itself, it came white-hot and impatient, searing itself permanently into my soul. This happened as Kurds lovingly took me by the hand and pulled me into their world. I soon found myself in touch with something vital and ageless. So enriching and ancient were the lessons the Kurds had to teach, it often made my life in the West seem thin and meaningless. Mysteriously, the impartation from each experience among my new friends was much greater than the experience itself. Perhaps this is the way of all liturgies. The land, the embrace of a generous yet fierce people, the nobility of tribe and custom, and the always audible echo of the Kurdish sufferings, each mystically became part of me. So began a transformation of manhood, of honor, of my understanding of history, of the way I viewed my life in this world, that continues to this moment. Many faithful friends have contributed liberally to this book. I acknowledge most of them toward the end of these pages. I trust none of them will be offended if I offer but one expression of gratitude here at the beginning. It is this: I owe a great debt, one I cannot repay, to the Kurds I have known around the world. Thank you, my dear friends, for refusing to leave me as I was. A word on literary liberties. The story of the Kurds presented in this book is true, as is each event described in these pages. The author has used pseudonyms if requested or if security required. In addition, the author has conflated some stories for clarity. Chapter 1. Of Kurds, Curses, and Jam. Quote, in the area of Iraq that was liberated from Saddam Hussein's control the earliest, the Kurdish provinces in the northeast part of the country, all objective observers seem to agree that an unprecedented prosperity has replaced what was once an unimaginable wasteland of misery. With their head start of liberation beginning in 1990,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?